Hi everyone, welcome back to our Jane Eyre read-along. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today we're going to be reading the second half of chapter 15, which has one of my favorite parts. I really wish I could do some mood lighting or, some spooky background because this is one of the, spookier scenes, more mysterious. You're not really sure what's going on with this scene until later in the book. But if you remember where we left off yesterday, Jane learned that Adele is an illegitimate child, maybe not even Mr. Rochester's. But of course, that makes Jane love Adele even more because Jane herself, considers herself orphaned, just like Adele. And also, Jane's getting more relaxed in her post at Thornfield Hall. She feels comfortable with the people she lives with. She's getting healthier. She's gaining weight. So things are going well. And then this mysterious thing's going to happen in this half of the chapter. So hold on to your hats. And Mr. Rochester, was he now ugly in my eyes? No, reader. Gratitude and many associations, all pleasurable and genial, made his face the object I best liked to see. His presence in a room was more cheering than the brightest fire. Yet I had not forgotten his faults. Indeed, I could not, for he brought them frequently before me. He was proud, sardonic, harsh to inferiority of every description. In my secret soul, I knew that his great kindness to me was balanced by unjust severity to many others. He was moody, too, unaccountably so. I, more than once, when sent for to read to him, found him sitting in his library alone, with his head bent on his folded arms, and, when he looked up, a morose, almost a malignant scowl blackened his features. I believe that his moodiness, his harshness, and his former faults of morality, I say former, for now he seemed corrected of them, had their source in some cruel cross of fate. I believed he was naturally a man of better tendencies, higher principles, and purer tastes than such as circumstances had developed, education instilled, or destiny encouraged. I thought there were excellent materials in him, though for the present they hung together somewhat spoiled and tangled. I cannot deny that I grieved for his grief, whatever that was, and would have given much to assuage it. Though I had now extinguished my candle and was laid down in bed, I could not sleep for thinking of his look when he paused in the avenue and told how his destiny had risen up before him and dared him to be happy at Thornfield. Why not? I asked myself. What alienates him from the house? Will he leave it again soon? Mrs. Fairfax said he seldom stayed here longer than a fortnight at a time, but now he has been resident 8 weeks. If he does go, the change will be doleful. Suppose he should be absent spring, summer, and autumn. How joyless sunshine and fine days will seem. I hardly know whether I had slept or not after this musing. At any rate, I started, wide awake, on hearing a vague murmur, peculiar and lugubrious, which sounded, I thought, just above me. I wished I had kept my candle burning. The night was drearily dark. My spirits were depressed. I rose and sat up in bed, listening. The sound was hushed. I tried again to sleep, but my heart beat anxiously. My inward tranquillity was broken. The clock, far down in the hall, struck 2. Just then it seemed my chamber door was touched, as if fingers had swept the panels in groping a way along the dark gallery outside. I said, "Who is there?" Nothing answered. I was chilled with fear. All at once I remembered that it might be Pilot, who, when the kitchen door chanced to be left open, not unfrequently found his way up to the threshold of Mr. Rochester's chamber. I had seen him lying there myself in the mornings. The idea calmed me down somewhat. I lay still. Silence composes the nerves, and as an unbroken hush now reigned again through the whole house, I began to feel the return of slumber. But it was not fated that I should sleep that night. A dream had scarcely approached my ear when it fled, affrighted, scared by a marrow-freezing incident enough. This was a demonic laugh, low, suppressed, and deep, uttered, as it seemed, at the very keyhole to my chamber door. The head of my bed was near the door, and I thought at first the goblin laughter stood at my bedside, or rather crouched by my pillow. But I rose, looked around, and could see nothing. while, as I still gazed, the unnatural sound was reiterated, and I knew it came from behind the panels. My first impulse was to rise and fasten the bolt. My next, again, was to cry out, "Who's there?" Something gurgled and moaned. Ear-long, steps retreated up the gallery towards the third-story staircase. A door had lately been made to shut in that staircase. I heard it open and close, and all was still. Was that Grace Poole, and is she possessed with a devil? Thought I. Impossible now to remain longer by myself. I must go to Mrs. Fairfax. I hurried on my frock and a shawl. I withdrew the bolt and opened the door with a trembling hand. There was a candle burning just outside, and on the matting in the gallery. I was surprised at this circumstance, but still more was I amazed to perceive the air quite dim, as if filled with smoke. And while looking to the right hand and left to find whence these blue wreaths issued, I became further aware of the strong smell of burning. Something creaked. It was a door ajar, and that door was Mr. Rochester's, and the smoke rushed in a cloud from thence. I thought no more of Mrs. Fairfax. I thought no more of Grace Poole, or the laugh. In an instant, I was within the chamber. Tongues of flame darted round the bed. The curtains were on fire. In the midst of the blaze and vapor, Mr. Rochester lay stretched motionless in a deep sleep. "Wake, wake!" I cried. I shook him, but he only murmured and turned. The smoke had stupefied him. Not a moment could be lost. The very sheets were kindling. I rushed to his basin and ewer. Fortunately, one was wide and the other deep, and both were filled with water. I heaved them up, deluged the bed and its occupant, flew back to my own room, brought my own water jug, baptized the couch afresh, and, by God's aid, succeeded in extinguishing the flames which were devouring it. The hiss of the quenched element, the breakage of a pitcher when I flung from my hand when I had emptied it, and, above all, the splash of the shower bath I had liberally bestowed, roused Mr. Rochester at last. Though it was now dark, I knew he was awake, because I heard him fulminating strange anathemas at finding himself lying in a pool of water. "Is there a flood?" he cried. "No, sir," I answered, "but there has been a fire. Get up. Do. You are quenched now. I will fetch you a candle." "In the name of all the elves in Christendom, is that Jane Eyre?" he demanded. "What have you done with me, witch, sorceress? Who is in the room besides you? Have you plotted to drown me?" "I'll fetch you a candle, sir, and in heaven's name get up. Somebody has plotted something. You cannot too soon find out who and what it is." "There, I am up now, but at your peril you fetch a candle yet. Wait 2 minutes till I get into some dry garments, if any dry there be. Yes, here is my dressing gown. Now run." I did run. I brought the candle, which still remained in the gallery. He took it from my hand, held it up, and surveyed the bed, all blackened and scorched, the sheets drenched, the carpet round swimming in water. "What is it, and who did it?" he asked. I briefly related to him what had transpired, the strange laugh I had heard in the gallery, the step ascending to the third story, the smoke, the smell of fire which had conducted me to his room, in what state I had found matters there, and how I had deluged him with all the water I could lay hands on. He listened very gravely. His face, as I went on, expressed more concern than astonishment. He did not immediately speak when I had concluded. "Shall I call Mrs. Fairfax?" I asked. "Mrs. Fairfax? No. What the deuce would you call her for? What can she do? Let her sleep, unmolested. Then I will fetch Leah, and wake John and his wife?" "Not at all. Just be still. You have a shawl on. If you are not warm enough, you may take my cloak yonder. Wrap it about you, and sit down in the armchair, there. I will put it on. Now place your feet on the stool to keep them out of the wet. I'm going to leave you a few minutes. I shall take the candle. Remain where you are till I return. Be still as a mouse. I must pay a visit to the second story. Don't move, remember, or call anyone." He went. I watched the light withdraw. He passed up the gallery very softly, unclosed the staircase door with as little noise as possible, shut it after him, and the last ray vanished. I was left in total darkness. I listened for some noise, but heard nothing. A very long time elapsed. I grew weary. It was cold, in spite of the cloak. And then I did not see the use of staying, as I was not to rouse the house. I was on the point of risking Mr. Rochester's displeasure by disobeying his orders, when the light once more gleamed dimly on the gallery wall, and I heard his unshod feet tread the matting. I hope it is he, thought I, and not something worse. He re-entered, pale and very gloomy. I have found it all out, said he, setting his candle down on the washstand. It is as I thought. How, sir? He made no reply, but stood with his arms folded, looking on the ground. At the end of a few minutes, he inquired in rather a peculiar tone, I forget whether you said you saw anything when you opened your chamber door. No, sir, only the candlestick on the ground. But you heard an odd laugh? You have heard that laugh before, I should think, or something like it? Yes, sir, there is a woman who sews here, called Grace Poole. She laughs in that way. She is a singular person. Just so. Grace Poole, you have guessed it. She is, as you say, singular, very. Well, I shall reflect on the subject. Meantime, I am glad that you are the only person, besides myself, acquainted with the precise details of tonight's incident. You are no talking fool. Say nothing about it. I will account for this state of affairs, pointing to the bed. And now return to your own room. I shall do very well on the sofa in the library for the rest of the night. It is near 4. In 2 hours the servants will be up. Good night then, sir, said I, departing. He seemed surprised, very inconsistently so, as he'd just told me to go. What? He exclaimed. Are you quitting me already in that way? You said I might go, sir, but not without taking leave, not without a word or two of acknowledgment and goodwill, not, in short, in that brief, dry fashion. Why, you have saved my life, snatched me from a horrible and excruciating death, and you walk past me as if we're mutual strangers? At least shake hands. He held out his hand. I gave him mine. He took it first in one, then in both his own. You have saved my life. I have a pleasure in owing you so immense a debt. I cannot say more. Nothing else that has being would have been tolerable to me in the chamber, in the character of creditor, for such an obligation. But you, it is different. I feel your benefit no burden, Jane. He paused, gazed at me. Words almost visible trembled on his lips, but his voice was checked. Good night again, sir. There is no debt, benefit, burden, obligation in the case. I knew, he continued, you would do me good in some way, at some time. I saw it in your eyes when I first beheld you. Their expression and smile did not... Again he stopped. Did not, he proceeded hastily, strike delight to my very inmost heart, so for nothing. People talk of natural sympathies. I've heard of good genii. There are grains of truth in the wildest fable. My cherished preserver, good night. Strange energy was in his voice, strange fire in his look. I am glad I happened to be awake, I said, and then I was going. What? You will go? I am cold, sir. Cold? Yes, and standing in a pool. Go then, Jane, go. But he still retained my hand, and I could not free it. I bethought myself of an expedient. I think I hear Mrs. Fairfax move, sir, said I. Well, leave me. He relaxed his fingers, and I was gone. I regained my couch, but never thought of sleeping. Till morning dawned, I was tossed on a buoyant but unquiet sea, where billows of trouble rolled under surges of joy. I thought sometimes I saw beyond its wild waters a shore, sweet as the hills of Belua, and now and then a freshening gale, wakened by hope, bore my spirit triumphantly towards the bourne, but I could not reach it. Even fancy, a counteracting breeze blew off land and continually drove me back. Sense would resist delirium, judgment would warn passion. Too feverish to rest, I rose as soon as day dawned. So that's the end of chapter 15. Suspenseful, mysterious. Why isn't Rochester mad that his bed was set on fire? all these questions will be answered later in the book, so I hope that you continue watching. Let me know what you think of this scene in the comments. I want to know if you think it's interesting too, because, like I said, it's one of my favorites. But I will see you tomorrow, again at noon. Until then, stay safe and wash your hands. Bye.